When we search the scriptures for examples of believers that we can model after, we can find some pretty poor examples, but there are some of great and faithful servants of God. Good morning, I'm Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Tuesday. When the Lord and Satan meet up in the Old Testament, God asked Satan to consider Job as an example of a man who trusts in God, who shuns evil and lives a blameless and upright life. In Job chapter 1 and verse 8, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and an upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. We find this encounter interesting that God would even converse with Satan. But of all God's children whom Satan is attacking and trying to steal, God asked him to consider the man Job as one of his most faithful servants. The book of Job actually begins with this description. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. In ancient times, perhaps even before Abraham and the nation of Israel introduced their true and living God to the world of Gentiles, Job was already a believer. And he was an exemplary believer. By this description, he was blameless and upright. Here is a man who knew what it was like to live pleasing to God. We know with the world finding fault with every believer around us, it's difficult to live that blameless life. And by the way, this is not the description given by his neighbors. This is actually God's observation of the man Job. I wonder how God would describe our life as he sees into our heart or sees our actions, maybe even our motivations. He is not only blameless and upright in this picture, but he fears God and he shuns all kinds of evil. The very fact that he fears God in a godless world is extraordinary. I'm afraid with the godless society that we live in, we have perhaps lost our fear and our reverence for God that we once had. Fearing God is what causes him to live that blameless and upright life. And by the way, it should cause us to do so also. And being known as one who shuns evil is also an admirable and perhaps unbelievable trait. There are many calls in the scriptures. Paul tells young Timothy, flee youthful lusts. James tells us, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Or the Bible tells us to flee sexual immorality, to flee idolatry. But many times we get caught up in the web of temptation and lust, and we just don't run from it enough. It's not just the idea of running away, by the way. It is shunning evil, which means that we reject it outright. The very thought of evil and engaging in it should be repulsive for God's followers. We cannot stand the filthy language that we hear on television or all around us. We cannot stand the nudity or the sexual innuendo that seems to be prevalent on television. Not only was Job known for his fear of God and his blameless life, but he was known for the way that he persevered. Through the loss of his family, the loss of all his herds, all his possessions, and even his own health, he desires to give God the glory. When he says, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Or another testimony where he says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Are we known as that kind of faithful servant today? Or do we need to go back and read about this example of how we should live our lives?